In September 1939, as Britain declared war on Nazi Germany, the Royal Artillery deployed a field gun that had first seen action during the Boer War era. While the Wehrmacht swept across Poland with modern artillery designed in the 1930s, British gunners prepared to fight with weapons whose fundamental design dated back to 1904. Military observers on both sides of the Channel pondered the same question. How could Britain possibly compete with obsolete guns against a mechanized army? The 25-pounder field gun, Britain's primary artillery piece throughout the Second World War, was not a new weapon at all. Rather, it was a clever reimagining of the 18-pounder gun, a design that had been in service for over 3 decades. The 18-pounder field gun, a stalwart of the Western Front, had unleashed millions of projectiles between 1914 and 1918. By the time Britain declared war, the Royal Artillery had approximately 1,000 of these repurposed guns ready for action. However, defense analysts viewed this situation with grave concern. The British Empire, a supposed military powerhouse, was entering the conflict armed with refurbished artillery, while Germany deployed the cutting-edge Lefh 18-105M howitzer, a purpose-built modern design. The British Army itself lacked confidence, as senior officers at the War Office knew they were sending men into battle with what seemed like museum exhibits on wheels. The Treasury had. The military's funding was severely constrained during the interwar period, forcing procurement officers to make difficult choices. Rather than investing in entirely new artillery systems, they opted to modify existing weapons already in storage. This decision, initially perceived as a desperate cost-cutting measure, would ultimately result in the creation of the most respected field artillery piece of the entire conflict. British gunners would employ this seemingly outdated cannon in a wide range of theaters, from the deserts of North Africa to the jungles of Burma, and from the Normandy beaches to the bridges over the Rhine. Commonwealth forces from Australia, New Zealand, Canada, South Africa, and India would also wield this formidable weapon. The 25-pounder artillery piece had earned the unwavering trust of its users by 1945. Even American gunners, whose own 105mm howitzers were excellent, begrudgingly acknowledged the 25-pounder's remarkable precision. The gun's reputation stemmed from a critical advantage: its ability to consistently place shells exactly where forward observers directed, even in the most demanding battlefield conditions. While German and American artillery relied on saturation bombardment, the 25-pounder could strike specific targets with what gunners described as surgical precision. A battery of 8 25-pounders could neutralize a machine gun position at 12,000 yards without wasting ammunition on the surrounding area. This accuracy was no accident. The 25-pounder field gun's remarkable longevity stemmed from a confluence of factors. Innovative engineering, lessons learned from the Great War, and Britain's interwar fiscal constraints all contributed to its enduring success. Designers, compelled to work with existing gun tubes, had to exercise exceptional ingenuity in every other component. Increasing the barrel size and propellant charge was not an option. Instead, they had to extract maximum performance from barrels that had already seen action in the trenches of the First World War. What the military initially perceived as a liability, reusing old guns, ultimately became Britain's secret advantage. The 25-pounder would go on to serve as a frontline combat weapon for nearly half a century, outlasting many of its modern counterparts. The renowned Ordnance QF 18-pounder field gun had an impressive lifespan, with some models still seeing action during the Gulf War of 1991, over 7 decades after their initial development. This revolutionary artillery piece emerged from trials conducted at the Royal Arsenal in Woolwich in 1904, marking a significant shift in gun design philosophy. The QF designation, standing for quick firing, was a crucial innovation, as earlier field guns had required the entire barrel to recoil after each shot, necessitating extensive crew effort to ready the weapon for the next round. In contrast, the 18-pounder's innovative recoil mechanism allowed for a much faster rate of fire, a critical advantage on the modern battlefield. The 18-pounder artillery piece boasted a cutting-edge hydrospring recoil system, which absorbed the shock of firing, allowing the gun carriage to remain stationary while only the barrel moved. This innovative design enabled crews to achieve a remarkable rate of fire, up to 20 rounds per minute when pushed to the limit, a pace that would have seemed almost fantastical to artillery officers accustomed to the more sedate Victorian-era weapons. Packing an 18.5-pound high-explosive shell, the gun could reach a maximum range of around 6,500 yards, or just under 4 miles. While this may seem modest by modern standards, in 1904 the 18-pounder was considered one of the most capable field guns in any army's arsenal. The Royal Field Artillery began receiving these weapons in 1906, and by the outbreak of the war, they had become a mainstay of the British artillery. The British military's artillery capabilities at the outbreak of the Great War in 1914 were quite limited, with only a small fraction of the required number of 18-pounder guns ready for immediate deployment. However, these weapons would go on to form the backbone of the country's artillery forces throughout the ensuing conflict. On the Western Front, the 18-pounder proved its worth under the most harrowing conditions imaginable. During the First Battle of Ypres in October 1914, British gunners fired these guns relentlessly for days on end, with their barrels glowing red-hot as they held back the German advances. Later, in the Battle of the Somme in 1916, 18-pounders participated in a preliminary bombardment that expended over 1.5 million shells in just 7 days, the sound of which could be heard as far away as London, some 140 miles distant. These guns were not merely targeting trenches, but were actively cutting through the enemy's defenses. The grueling battles of Flanders witnessed the evolution of artillery tactics as gunners confronted the harsh realities of combat. Amidst the churned, flat terrain, even minor targeting errors could prove disastrous, with shells landing on one's own forces rather than the enemy. Forward observers honed increasingly sophisticated techniques, utilizing telephone lines and wireless sets to meticulously adjust the aim. The concept of the creeping barrage, a moving wall of shell fire preceding the advancing infantry, demanded a level of precision unimaginable to earlier generations of artillerymen. By the war's end in 1918, the Royal Artillery had amassed an unprecedented wealth of practical firing experience, forged in the crucible of this relentless conflict. The British artillery force during the Great War amassed an unparalleled trove of empirical data, meticulously documenting the intricacies of shell trajectories, propellant performance in diverse conditions, and barrel wear patterns. This knowledge was not merely theoretical, but forged through the crucible of 4 years of large-scale industrial warfare. Over 99.5 million 18-pounder shells had been produced and a significant portion expended in combat. When the armistice arrived in November 1918, the British Army had thousands of 18-pounders in varying states of use and wear. Some had fired tens of thousands of rounds, necessitating complete barrel replacements, while others were relatively new, having been manufactured late in the conflict. The war's conclusion saw the Army's demobilization and Britain's attempt to forget the harrowing trench experience. Consequently, 833 of these guns were meticulously preserved in depots throughout the 1920s, even as they became increasingly 846 outdated due to other nations' advancements in artillery design. 840 yet, the Royal Artillery retained the institutional knowledge of what made a field gun 858 effective in modern warfare. They recognized that accuracy outweighed raw power, 904 that mobility affected survival, and that crews needed to rapidly 912 establish and fire their positions before enemy counterfire could locate them. When the time arrived to develop a new weapon for the impending conflict, 917 the lessons from the Western Front would be thoroughly incorporated. The 18-pounder artillery piece's legacy was just taking shape. The 1920s proved unkind to Britain's military forces. The Great War had financially crippled the nation, claiming nearly 1 million lives and consuming resources on an unprecedented scale. Desperate to restore fiscal stability, the Treasury slashed defense spending with an enthusiasm bordering on vindictiveness. The 10-year rule, adopted in 1919 and repeatedly renewed throughout the decade, assumed Britain would face no major war for at least a decade. This convenient fiction allowed politicians to justify keeping the army on a starvation budget while the Royal Navy and the nascent Royal Air Force competed for limited resources. For the Royal, the aftermath of the Great War left Germany contemplating future armaments, despite their defeat. Concurrently, France, Poland, and Czechoslovakia were investing in modern artillery designs. Conversely, Britain found itself unable to replace the aging 18-pounder guns languishing in storage. These venerable weapons were deteriorating, with their barrel rifling degrading over time, even without active use. Devising an entirely new field gun would have been prohibitively expensive, a cost the Treasury refused to authorize. Artillery officers at Woolwich confronted a dilemma blending tactical and financial constraints. The 18-pounder's maximum range of 9,300 yards, an improvement from its original 6,500-yard capability, was becoming increasingly inadequate. Armies of the modern era had become increasingly mobile, engaging the enemy from greater ranges. The existing 3.3-inch guns were found lacking in explosive power compared to the heavier ordnance adopted by other nations. However, designing a completely new artillery system from the ground up would be an immense undertaking, requiring the development of novel barrels, carriages, sights, ammunition, training manuals, and more. The astronomical costs involved were simply beyond the means of the financially constrained treasury. Faced with this dilemma, an artillery expert proposed a radical alternative. Instead of starting fresh, why not modify the thousands of existing 18-pounder barrels in storage? At first, the idea seemed absurd. The conventional wisdom held that simply boring out a gun barrel to a larger caliber would not produce a reliable or effective weapon. The military engineers meticulously analyzed the feasibility of modifying the existing 18-pounder artillery pieces. Their calculations revealed that the barrel could be bored out from 3.3 inches to 3.45 inches, effectively creating a new 25-pounder variant based on the increased shell weight. Despite the thinner steel walls, the structural integrity would remain within safe operational limits. This proposal gained momentum in 1933 as the international climate began to deteriorate. The rise of Hitler in Germany prompted British military planners to take action, despite the reluctance of some politicians to acknowledge the emerging threats. The Director of Artillery formally recommended converting the existing 18-pounders, rather than waiting years for a completely new design. The 25-pounder gun's development was a pragmatic choice. It was a cost-effective solution that could be rapidly implemented using existing manufacturing capabilities. Treasury officials favored the idea due to its affordability, while artillery officers accepted it as a feasible option. The decision to proceed with development was made in 1935, and by the following year, prototypes were undergoing trials. The new 25-pounder was not merely an enlarged version of the 18-pounder. Engineers designed a completely new carriage, the M2, which incorporated modern features such as split trails for enhanced traverse and a circular firing platform enabling all-round fire without moving the entire gun. The old 18-pounder barrel was mounted atop this modern carriage, creating a hybrid weapon system. The British military's approach to artillery development during this period involved a strategic blend of proven technologies and cutting-edge innovations. While some critics argued that this compromise represented a suboptimal solution, this pragmatic strategy ultimately yielded unexpected advantages. Unlike the German designers who were able to create purpose-built modern weapons without the constraints of outdated equipment and limited budgets, the British engineers were forced to exercise extraordinary ingenuity in every aspect of their designs, except for the barrel itself. This engineering challenge was far more complex than simply replacing old barrels, as each 18-pound barrel had to undergo meticulous inspection, measurement, and evaluation. The worn-out rifle barrels, having endured countless rounds, had become almost smooth, rendering them unfit for further use. These were promptly discarded. Conversely, those exhibiting acceptable wear patterns were selected for machining to the new 345 caliber specification. The boring process demanded meticulous precision, as even the slightest deviation of a few thousandths of an inch could compromise accuracy and potentially lead to hazardous pressure fluctuations during firing. The new shell design itself represented a middle ground, falling between the old 18-pounder and the heavier projectiles fired by howitzers. British ordnance engineers settled on an 87.6 mm diameter, which provided them with flexibility in propellant loadings, allowing the shell to be fired with various charge configurations. The 25-pounder artillery piece boasted remarkable adaptability, transitioning from close-range engagements at lower velocities to maximum-range shots with ease. This versatile charge system, borrowed from howitzer practices, endowed the gun with unparalleled flexibility. A single unit could deliver both the flat trajectory of a traditional field gun and the high-angle plunging fire of a howitzer. The carriage design stood out as the most significant innovation. The M2 carriage's split trails opened in a V-shape, forming a stable firing platform. Between the trails, engineers installed a circular base plate that allowed the gun to traverse 360 degrees. This innovative feature enabled crews to engage targets in any direction without physically repositioning the entire weapon. The 25-pounder field gun was a crucial asset in the dynamic mechanized warfare of World War II. Unlike the more limited traverse capabilities of contemporary German and American artillery pieces, this British weapon could rotate a full 360 degrees if necessary. A key innovation was the muzzle brake, which redirected propellant gases to counteract recoil forces. This allowed the lighter carriage to withstand the increased pressures from the larger shell without the entire gun violently recoiling. While muzzle brakes had been explored by various militaries for years, the British design proved exceptionally effective, significantly diminishing the felt recoil. The British military meticulously upgraded their artillery systems in the interwar period, incorporating 2 decades of operational experience. The Mk2 sighting mechanism featured numerous refinements, including graduated scales for range and deflection, built-in spirit levels to ensure level firing, and adjustments for environmental factors like wind, temperature, and propellant conditions. These variables significantly impacted long-range accuracy, with even modest crosswinds substantially affecting 25-pounder shells at maximum range. The sighting system allowed gunners to input precise corrections based on forward observer data. Production of the upgraded components commenced in 1938 at Royal Ordnance factories across Britain, with a methodical conversion process that stripped down the existing 18-pounder guns. The venerable artillery piece underwent a comprehensive overhaul. First, the barrel was detached from its aging carriage. It was then transported to the specialized 1810 facility. There, the barrel underwent precision machining to the updated caliber. The rifling was also modified to the latest pattern. Next, the gun underwent rigorous 1816 proof testing, with high-pressure rounds fired to validate its performance. Finally, the refurbished barrel was mounted on the new Mark II 1821 carriage. Each converted gun underwent thorough final trials before being accepted into 1827 service. As war loomed, production ramped up rapidly. Yet by September 1939, only around 1,025 of these modernized 1836-pounders were available. The Army required thousands more. Once the conflict began, manufacturing accelerated dramatically. The Royal 1844 Ordnance Factory in Nottingham became the primary production site, eventually churning out several thousand carriages. 1852 To mitigate the risk of German bombing, barrel boring was distributed across multiple facilities. By 1940, output had reached approximately 100 guns per month. The 25-pounder field guns production rapidly escalated during the early years of World War II. Initially conceived as a cost-effective compromise, this artillery piece soon became a mainstay of British and Commonwealth forces, renowned for its exceptional accuracy. The North African theatre provided the ultimate proving ground, as the gun's capabilities were tested against the unique challenges of the desert environment. Devoid of natural cover, the vast, arid expanses demanded exceptional precision from the artillery, which the 25-pounder consistently delivered. By 1942, The gun's monthly output had tripled compared to its initial 1940 figures. Each unit incorporated the meticulously engineered features that made it the most accurate field gun in any army's arsenal. When British and Commonwealth troops deployed to Egypt to counter the Italian advances from Libya, they found the desert conditions vastly different from the Western Front. The lack of terrain features, buildings, and vegetation forced the artillery to operate in the open, with nowhere to conceal themselves from the scorching 50 degrees Celsius summer heat. The Western Desert Force, later known as the Eighth Army, initially faced a significant numerical disadvantage in Italian artillery. However, during Operation Compass in December 1940, British gunners realized they could engage Italian positions from ranges where return fire was ineffective. The 25-pounder's impressive maximum range of 13,400 yards provided a crucial standoff advantage for British forces. At the Battle of Bari, Royal Artillery batteries systematically destroyed Italian gun positions by firing from locations the Italians couldn't reach, showcasing the remarkable accuracy of the 25-pounder. Observers reported the guns consistently hitting target zones within 50 yards, transforming the battles into contests of maneuver and precise fire, an environment where the 25-pounder's advantages would shine. The arrival of the Royal Marine Light Artillery (RML) in February 1941 with the Afrika Korps marked a significant shift in the Desert War. German artillery doctrine emphasized aggressive counterfire, requiring the rapid location and destruction of enemy guns. Rammel's gunners, seasoned professionals equipped with capable weapons like the 105 Feel 18, engaged in a deadly chess match with their German counterparts. The 25-pounder gun's all-round traverse proved invaluable, allowing crews to fire in multiple directions before quickly limbering up and relocating to avoid counter-battery fire. This mobility was crucial during the Siege of Tobruk in April 1941, where Australian and British forces leveraged their artillery's flexibility to support the defence. The British Army deployed their formidable 25-pounder guns in both defensive and counterattack operations during the prolonged siege. The garrison possessed approximately 72 of these artillery pieces, which they fired relentlessly throughout the 240-day ordeal. Repeated attempts by German forces to breach the perimeter were consistently thwarted by the accurate 25-pound barrage that disrupted the assaults. Field Marshal Montgomery himself acknowledged the devastating impact of the British artillery in his personal journal, noting the impossibility of massing troops for an attack without immediately incurring a hail of precise shellfire. The gun's accuracy derived in part from its advanced fire control system, with a centralized command structure that enabled forward observers embedded with infantry units to direct the devastating bombardment. The 25-pounder artillery piece boasted a number of impressive capabilities. Its calibrated sights and variable charge system allowed for rapid adjustments based on observer feedback. Gunners could quickly dial in corrections and fire again within seconds. In contrast, German artillery typically operated more independently with less coordination between batteries. The Battle of El Alamein in October 1942 exemplified the 25-pounder's effectiveness at its peak. For the offensive, Montgomery's Eighth Army assembled an unprecedented concentration of 925 of these guns, the largest British artillery deployment since 1918. The opening barrage on October 23 involved these guns unleashing over 500,000 rounds in the first 24 hours. However, this was no indiscriminate bombardment, as the fire was carefully. The North African battles showcased the remarkable capabilities of the British 25-pounder field gun. Meticulously planned and executed strikes targeted German and Italian positions with uncanny precision, as attested by a captured enemy officer who reported the British artillery's intimate knowledge of every enemy asset. The desert campaigns firmly established the 25-pounder's formidable reputation. By the time the Afrika Korps surrendered in Tunisia in 1943, the British and Commonwealth gunners had unwavering faith in their weapon. They had demonstrated its superiority over equivalent German guns in accuracy, range, and versatility, a remarkable turnaround for a gun that had initially been dismissed as a makeshift conversion. The 25-pounder's renowned precision was no mere illusion, but rather the result of meticulous physics and engineering. To understand how this gun could consistently place shells within tight target zones, we must examine the intricate mechanical systems that set it apart from contemporary designs. From the carriage to the ammunition, every component of this weapon system prioritized precision as the primary objective, rather than an afterthought. The split trail carriage, a seemingly simple innovation, had a profound impact. When the trails opened into a V configuration, they created a wide, stable base that resisted lateral movement during firing. Despite the substantial recoil forces, even with the muzzle brake absorbing some energy, the carriage's design ensured the gun remained firmly in place. The 25-pounder artillery piece boasted a distinctive design that enhanced its accuracy and reliability on the battlefield. Its broad stance, with a 25-37 box or single trail configuration, minimized the risk of lateral displacement during firing, ensuring a more consistent return to the 25-49 firing position after each shot. This stability was further amplified by the circular firing platform, a steel plate bolted between the trails, which allowed the gun to traverse a full 360 degrees 26.08 without the crew having to reposition the trails. Crucially, this platform provided a level, stable surface that maintained its characteristics 26-19 between shots, unlike conventional carriages that would settle differently 26-25 when firing into soft terrain. The 25-pounder artillery piece boasted a sophisticated sighting system that enabled exceptional accuracy. Its platform design minimized variations in the point of impact, allowing crews to fire numerous rounds while maintaining precise aim. Drawing insights from the extensive firing data gathered during the Great War, the 25-pounder's number 11 dial sight featured remarkably fine graduations for both elevation and traverse adjustments. Gunners could set the elevation to within a quarter of a degree and the traverse to a similar level of precision. At a range of 10,000 yards, a 1-degree error in elevation would result in a deviation of approximately 175 yards, but the 25-pounder's sights enabled much finer corrections. This allowed gunners to make minute adjustments based on the specific conditions of each shot, ensuring a high degree of accuracy. The British artillery engineers meticulously crafted their 25-pounder shells, ensuring exceptional ballistic performance through precise manufacturing. The streamlined shell design, with its carefully machined copper driving band, enabled consistent spin stabilization during flight, minimizing dispersion. Stringent quality control measures on ammunition production guaranteed remarkable uniformity within each production batch, allowing gunners to reliably predict the shell's trajectory based on their elevation and charge settings. The 25-pounder artillery piece employed a distinct loading mechanism compared to fixed ammunition. Instead of a predetermined propellant charge, it utilized separate loading ammunition. The shell was loaded first, followed by the cartridge case containing the propellant charge. Gunners had the flexibility to choose from 3 charge increments: Charge 1, smallest, Charge 2, and Charge 3, maximum range. Later, a Charge Super was introduced for extended range capabilities. This system enabled gunners to select the optimal charge based on the target distance, allowing for a flatter trajectory and reduced wind impact, resulting in tighter shot grouping across all ranges. Temperature fluctuations were an additional factor that influenced the ballistic performance of the 25-pounder. The 25-pounder artillery piece's performance was heavily dependent on precise compensation for various factors. Propellant temperature significantly affected burn rates, with colder charges producing lower pressures and shorter ranges compared to warmer ones. British gunners utilized intricate range tables that accounted for propellant temperature, air temperature, barrel wear, and even the Earth's rotation, ensuring accurate long-range fire. These tables were not mere guesswork but rather the result of extensive testing and mathematical modeling. By properly applying the necessary corrections, the 25-pounder could consistently place shells within a 50-yard circle at maximum range. The 25-pounders returned to European soil during the Normandy invasion on June 6, 1944, marked its first deployment since the evacuation at Dunkirk, as part of the larger Operation Overlord. The D-Day invasion saw the deployment of around 425 heavy artillery pieces, with hundreds more arriving in subsequent waves. This marked a stark contrast to the North African campaign, where the open terrain had favored long-range firepower. In Normandy, the close-quarters environment of hedgerows, villages, and forests, coupled with the enemy's well-entrenched defensive positions, presented a formidable challenge. Flexibility and rapid responsiveness to infantry requests for fire support became crucial, as the bocage landscape, with its infamous hedgerows transforming every field into a natural fortress, created nightmarish conditions for the attackers. German machine gun nests, anti-tank guns, and mortar teams could conceal themselves behind earthen banks topped with dense vegetation, remaining invisible until they opened fire. Without suppressing these positions, the infantry's advance was severely impeded, but locating them proved to be a daunting task. The 25-pounder artillery piece proved to be an excellent choice for the task at hand. Forward observation officers accompanied infantry units, and when a German position was detected, they could promptly call in fire support. The gun's remarkable accuracy ensured that shells could land within yards of British troops without endangering them. Operation Goodwood in July 1944 showcased the coordinated use of artillery on a scale not witnessed since the Great War. Montgomery's attempt to break out from the Normandy beachhead involved 7 20-25-pounders, which unleashed a preliminary bombardment onto German positions. The barrage lasted 3 hours and expended over 200,000 shells. Unlike the indiscriminate area bombardments of the previous conflict, this was a targeted fire mission based on aerial reconnaissance and precise targeting. The British artillery unleashed a devastating barrage, drawing upon detailed intelligence to target specific German strongholds, command centers, and gun emplacements. Post-battle assessments confirmed the bombardment's devastating impact, rendering entire German units combat ineffective even before the British tanks commenced their advance. As the campaign progressed, the adaptability of the 25-pounder gun became increasingly apparent. During urban combat in K, gunners engaged at extremely close quarters, using the lowest charge to drop shells with pinpoint accuracy onto German-held structures. In the August breakout from Files, these same guns engaged retreating German columns at their maximum range. The versatility of the artillery allowed batteries to provide comprehensive tactical support across the entire spectrum of operations, without the need for specialized equipment. The river crossings operation in March 1945 put the British artillery's coordination skills to the ultimate test. As part of Operation Plunder, over 3,000 guns, including more than 1,000 25-pounders, participated in one of the war's most intricate fire plans. The barrage involved timed concentrations on specific targets, smokescreens to blind German observers, and creeping barrages to shield the advancing infantry. The 25-pounder's reliable accuracy was crucial, as the shells had to land precisely where planned, or the entire synchronization would collapse. The operation succeeded largely due to the British gunners' ability to place fire exactly when and where the commanders required it. Captured German artillerymen frequently remarked on the effectiveness of the British artillery. Prisoner interrogations following the Rhine River crossing highlighted consistent patterns: the British artillery's rapid response to fire support requests, the precision of their bombardment, and the difficulty in countering their mobile batteries. One German officer remarked that the British guns seemed omniscient, a testament to their integrated fire control system connecting observers, command centers, and gun emplacements. By the German surrender in May 1945, the ubiquitous 25-pounder had discharged millions of shells across the Western Front, providing critical support for every major British and Canadian offensive. The renowned field gun that proved its worth across 2 global conflicts, the 25-pounder, earned high praise from the legendary Commander Montgomery. Described as the finest artillery piece of the war, this once obsolete weapon demonstrated its unparalleled capabilities on the European battlefields. Veteran gunners who served the 25-pounder often speak of its unwavering reliability, precision, and a peculiar fondness for a dependable companion that never failed them, even in the harshest conditions. While technical data provides insights, the first-hand accounts of those who operated this remarkable weapon offer a unique perspective that transcends mere specifications. The men who wielded the iconic British field gun were no mere engineers or academics. Their very lives hinged on the weapon's flawless performance under the most demanding conditions. Sergeant William Ross, who served with the 2nd Regiment Royal Horse Artillery in North Africa, attested to the profound confidence the gun inspired. "You knew exactly where your shells were going," he recalled. "The German guns could launch heavier projectiles over greater distances, but we could strike our mark with unfailing precision on the first attempt. That's what kept us alive." This sentiment echoes across veteran accounts, underscoring the immense psychological edge conferred by total trust in one's firearm. While German crews often expended numerous ranging shots to locate their targets, the British gunners anticipated unerring hits from the outset. The physical exertion involved in operating the 25-pounder artillery piece was considerable. A crew of 6 individuals had to work in perfect unison to manage the weapon's firing process. The gun commander directed the engagement, translating orders into the necessary adjustments. The layer adjusted the sights, altering the elevation and traverse. 2 loaders handled the ammunition, with one inserting the shell and the other ramming it home and loading the propellant charge. The breech operator opened and closed the breech mechanism after each shot was fired. Finally, the firer pulled the lanyard, activating the firing pin. In a well-trained crew, the entire sequence from receiving fire orders to the first round departing the barrel occurred with seamless efficiency. The rapid-fire capabilities of the artillery piece were truly remarkable. Veteran bombardier James Mallister, who fought through Normandy and into Germany, vividly described the intense, unrelenting nature of the sustained bombardment. Even with ear protection, the deafening roar would leave one's ears ringing. The propellant smoke stung the eyes, and the barrel grew so scorching hot that it was impossible to touch. For hours on end, the crew would fire volley after volley, sometimes expending hundreds of rounds. The constant concussive force would leave their entire bodies trembling. Yet, the gun remained steadfast, never faltering or jamming, faithfully delivering each shell to its intended target. Meticulous maintenance routines were drilled into every crew member. After extended firing, the barrels required thorough cleaning to remove the accumulated propellant residue that could. The 17-pounder anti-tank gun's recoil mechanism necessitated routine inspections, hydraulic fluid level checks, seal assessments, and spring tension adjustments. Meticulous breech cleaning and lubrication were also essential. Sights required regular zeroing and calibration to maintain accuracy. These maintenance tasks were not optional, they ensured the weapon's flawless performance when it mattered most. British gun crews took great pride in their diligent weapon upkeep, often working through the night to ready their guns for action at first light. The all-round traverse capability was especially praised by crews who had faced German counterfire. As gunner Thomas Bradshaw, serving in Italy, explained, "The enemy was skilled at detecting our muzzle flashes." The versatile 25-pounder artillery piece proved invaluable during the conflict, granting gunners the ability to swiftly redirect fire without physically relocating the entire weapon. This agility contrasted sharply with the limitations of older 18-pounder models, which required laborious manual repositioning. Accounts from officers who later collaborated with foreign artillery units further underscored the 25-pounder's capabilities. As Lieutenant David Morton, who liaised with American forces in 1944, observed, the British gunners could neutralize targets with far fewer rounds compared to the American 105mm howitzers, much to the Yanks' surprise. The 25-pounder artillery piece was a versatile and resilient weapon that continued to serve with distinction long after the end of World War II. While the opposing forces had contrasting philosophies regarding its employment, the 25-pounder's capabilities were widely respected. Following the victory in Europe, the gun was redeployed alongside British and Commonwealth troops to conflicts around the world, demonstrating its adaptability and endurance. From the deserts of North Africa to the battlefields of Korea, The 25-pounder proved its worth, remaining in active service for over 5 decades and earning a reputation as a reliable and effective artillery piece. The Korean Peninsula in the summer of 1950 witnessed the deployment of British Commonwealth forces as part of the United Nations response. The venerable 25-pounder artillery piece faced unprecedented challenges in this unfamiliar theater. Bitterly cold Korean winters, with temperatures plummeting to -30 degrees Celsius, combined with rugged mountainous terrain that hampered mobility, and an enemy armed with Soviet-designed artillery doctrine and weaponry. The extreme cold posed immediate obstacles. Hydraulic fluids in the recoil systems thickened, propellant charges burned erratically in the frozen conditions, and crews grappled to operate the guns with numb, frostbitten hands. Yet the resilient 25-pounder adapted. Specialized cold weather lubricants were developed for the recoil mechanisms. Propellant charges were stored in heated bunkers, only brought forward just before firing. Range tables were recalculated to account for the altered environmental factors. The Battle of the Imjin River in April 1951 witnessed the British 45th Field Regiment's 25-pounder guns providing crucial fire support to the embattled Gloucester's regiment, which was being overrun by Chinese forces. For 3 days, the guns fired continuously, expending over 10,000 rounds and breaking up repeated Chinese attacks. The accuracy of the artillery was essential, as the British positions were so close to the Chinese assault waves that the shells had to land within 100 yards of friendly troops. The Malayan emergency, which spanned from 1948 to 1960, presented entirely different challenges. Fighting communist insurgents in the dense jungle required artillery to support infantry patrols in terrain where visibility extended barely 20 yards. The 25-pounder field gun was a vital asset in the jungle, providing on-call fire support to patrols that might suddenly encounter enemy positions. Its rapid deployment capability was crucial, as crews could quickly set up, fire a mission, and relocate within 15 minutes, essential in an environment where insurgents would attack isolated outposts. During the ill-fated Suez Crisis of 1956, 25-pounders supported British and French forces, with some even air-dropped during the parachute assault on Port Said, then assembled and firing within hours of landing. This rapid deployment capability had been developed earlier. The 25-pounder field gun was a ubiquitous presence on the battlefields of the mid-20th century, employed by a diverse array of military forces. India and Pakistan, former British colonies, both utilized these guns in their wars of 1965 and 1971. With Pakistani gunners employing them at the Battle of Obsolete and Indian forces using them throughout the 1971 conflict that led to Bangladesh's independence. Similarly, Israeli forces captured 25-pounders from Arab armies and incorporated them into their early confrontations. The gun's widespread adoption across the Commonwealth and its adversaries underscored its tactical versatility, even as the political fallout from the Suez Crisis overshadowed its military achievements during the brief combat operations it supported. The 25-pounder field gun was a stalwart of British and Commonwealth military forces for decades after World War II. This reliable artillery piece saw its final major deployment during the 1982 Falklands conflict, where British troops relied on it as their primary field gun, supplemented by a few supporting units. Even 37 years after the end of the Second World War, the 25-pounder remained a trusted asset, with New Zealand not retiring its last examples until 1989 and the Indian Army operating them into the 1990s. Remarkably, a few 25-pounders may have remained in service with smaller nations into the early 2000s, cementing its status as one of the longest-serving artillery systems in history. The sheer production numbers speak to the gun's widespread success and enduring utility across the former British Commonwealth. The 12,025 caliber 25-pounder artillery pieces were manufactured between 1939 and 1945, serving with a diverse array of nations, including Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and India. While some were lost in combat, many remained in service for decades after their initial deployment, posing a question that continues to intrigue military historians. How did a gun based on 1904 technology, converted from obsolete weapons as a cost-saving measure, manage to outperform and outlast the purpose-built modern artillery of wealthier nations? The answer to this query unveils uncomfortable truths about military procurement and the distinction between theoretical superiority and practical effectiveness. In contrast, consider the German Lefh-18, a 105mm howitzer designed with the latest technology. The 1930s witnessed the emergence of a novel howitzer, meticulously designed for modern warfare. On paper, this artillery piece boasted impressive specifications, including a heavier shell and comparable range, reflecting a cutting-edge design philosophy. However, it never quite attained the renowned accuracy associated with the venerable 25-pounder. In contrast, the German counterpart was heavier, less maneuverable, and lacked the versatile all-round traverse that made the 25-pounder so adaptable. German artillery doctrine prioritized concentrated firepower over precision, a strategy that proved highly effective when ammunition was plentiful, but became a liability as supplies dwindled. The 25-pounder's philosophy of accurate, efficient targeting with minimal expenditure proved more sustainable in the long run. Meanwhile, the American 105mm M2A1 howitzer emerged as an excellent weapon, serving with distinction. The American artillery excelled throughout the conflict and beyond. It was a dependable, powerful system produced in vast quantities. Yet even the U.S. gunners acknowledged the superior precision of the 25-pounder. The divergence lay in the design priorities. American artillery prioritized mass production and overwhelming firepower, accepting a slight reduction in accuracy as an acceptable trade-off. In contrast, the 25-pounder emphasized precision above all else, even if it meant a lighter shell. Both approaches proved effective, though in distinct ways. The British conversion process compelled ruthless efficiency in every component except the barrel. Designers could not rely on a larger gun or more propellant to compensate for limitations. They had to extract maximum performance from the available resources. The 25-pounder field gun was a product of necessity, born out of the constraints of the time. This limitation spurred a wave of innovative advancements, including the circular firing platform, the sophisticated sighting system, and the variable charge ammunition. Features that might not have been deemed essential in an unconstrained design. Oftentimes, creative solutions emerge from the confines of limited resources, in ways that abundant resources cannot replicate. The 25-pounder's design was a culmination of 2 decades of artillery expertise, with each component reflecting the lessons learned from previous conflicts. The split trails, for instance, addressed stability issues observed during the Great War, while the muzzle brake compensated for the lighter carriage. The sights incorporated corrections that gunners had manually calculated in prior engagements. In essence, the 25-pounder embodied the institutional knowledge and corporate memory that had been distilled into its engineering, a testament to the power of experience-driven innovation. The 25-pounder artillery piece earned a reputation as the most precise field gun of the Second World War, according to post-war assessments by various military forces. Even in the 1950s, British tests found the gun remained competitive in accuracy, despite newer designs offering greater range and shell weight. The 25-pounder's precision stemmed from a combination of factors: a stable platform, excellent sights, consistent ammunition, and well-trained crews, that collectively provided a significant overall advantage. While no single feature made the gun exceptional, the seamless integration of these elements contributed to its longevity. Artillery pieces from the 1940s would typically have been considered obsolete by the 1970s, but the 25-pounder's robustness and adaptability allowed it to remain in service. Prolonged service of the 25-pounder artillery piece was enabled by its extended firing range, guided munitions, and improved propellants. Yet this venerable weapon remained in use due to its reliable performance under conditions that would overwhelm more sophisticated designs. Simplicity, when combined with precision engineering, can produce durability that technical complexity often fails to match. The gun's fewer failure points, ease of field maintenance, and suitability for crews with limited training surpassed the requirements of more complex systems. This example offers a broader lesson for military procurement. The 25-pounder succeeded by addressing a specific need for accurate field artillery, rather than pursuing abstract ideals of modernity. It may not have been the newest, largest, or most. The 25-pounder artillery piece, though not the most technologically sophisticated, was undoubtedly the most effective at fulfilling its intended role. Defense organizations frequently overlook this fundamental principle, becoming enamored with cutting-edge technology while neglecting proven effectiveness, mistakenly equating complexity with capability. The supposedly makeshift solution born from budgetary constraints and old barrels, Britain's 25-pounder, defied obsolescence and became the benchmark against which field artillery was evaluated. It demonstrated that clever engineering, institutional expertise, and well-defined design priorities could triumph over raw technological progress. The 25-pounder not only won the war but also shaped the definition of a field gun for the next 50 years.